Genocide is morally wrong. We can all agree on that moral statement, right?
But is it objectively true? Is it true relative to the society we live in? Can we ever even call a moral statement true or false?
Hello everyone, this is Wandering Tati. Is there such a thing as right and wrong? Are moral truths universal, or are they dependent on culture or personal feelings?
These are the kinds of questions that philosophers have been debating for centuries. Remember the statement from the start? Genocide is morally wrong? Is this statement something that can be true or false? Suppose we think that is the case. Then is it objectively true, or is it true relative to someone or something? Or perhaps we cannot even say that something like that can be true or false at all. Philosophers are still arguing about these issues, and today we will see a brief intro to three major philosophical approaches to the status of morality: objectivism, relativism, and emotivism. First we have objectivism.
In this view, moral judgments are objective matters of fact.
It is as when we make an empirical observation about the world, something like the Earth rotates around the Sun. Our moral judgments are the sort of things that can be true or false, and what makes them true or false are things that are generally independent of who we are or what cultural groups we belong to. For example, murder is wrong. According to an objectivist, this statement is objectively true. It doesn't matter whether a particular culture or individual believes that murder is acceptable. It is still morally wrong.
One major criticism of objectivism is that cultures disagree on moral issues. So how can there be a universal truth?
For example, some cultures may accept practices like polygamy or capital punishment, while some others do not. Objectivists might respond by saying that disagreement doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't an objective truth. After all, people once disagreed about whether the Earth rotates around the Sun, but that didn't change the fact that it did. In a similar way, a moral truth can exist even if people disagree on it. Another objection to this theory is that there is an important difference between how we determine whether something is morally right or wrong and how we determine whether an empirical claim about the world is true or false. To what an objectivist might answer that sometimes we do use empirical observation to determine what's right and wrong. For example, many objectivists think that what's right is what maximizes overall happiness. Next, we will see relativism.
Here, we agree that moral judgments can be true or false, but only relatively.
This view says that morality is not universal, but instead depends on cultural, social, or individual perspectives. Our moral judgments are indeed true or false, but they are only true or false relative to something that can vary between people. For example, in one culture, eating certain animals might be considered morally wrong, while in another culture, it is perfectly acceptable. For a relativist, neither culture is objectively right or wrong. Rather, morality is simply relative to each society.
A common objection of this view is that it can lead to a moral paralysis. If all moral systems are equally valid, then how can we criticize harmful practices?
If morality is just a matter of cultural norms, then it seems like we would have to accept even the most horrific practices if they are part of a culture. Relativists argue that criticism can still happen within cultural frameworks. For example, someone from within a culture can challenge harmful practices by appealing to other values within that same culture, without claiming that there is a universal moral truth. Another objection to this theory is that it's hard to make sense of moral progress. We think that humanity gets better at being moral. For example, we used to be okay with slavery and later came to the conclusion that it is morally wrong. To this, relativists answer that different cultures overlap and this would explain moral progress. And finally, we have emotivism.
According to emotivism, whenever we say that something is right or wrong, all we are doing is expressing our emotions about the thing. It is commonly referred to as the boo hooray theory,
because it suggests that moral statements are not objective truths, but simply expressions of our emotions or attitudes.
All we are doing is something like charity, hooray, or murder, boo.
Swedish? Are they booing me?
No, they're saying boo earns. Boo earns.
Are you saying boo or boo earns? I was saying boo earns.
Moral judgments are neither objectively true or false, nor relatively true or false. They are just direct expressions of our emotive reactions. Emotivism was famously developed by A.J. Ayer, who argued that moral statements are expressions of our feelings and attempts to influence others. According to this view, morality is more about persuasion than truth.
A common objection of emotivism is that it seems to reduce morality to mere emotional outbursts.
If moral statements are only expressions of feelings, how do we have meaningful moral debates? After all, if one person says boo to murder and another one says hooray to murder, how can we determine who is right? Emotivists might respond by saying that moral debates are really about changing people's attitudes, not about discovering objective truths. So moral discussions are still meaningful, but they just serve a different purpose, that of persuasion rather than fact-finding. Another objection to this view is that it seems that we can use our reason to arrive at our moral judgments, much like we use our reason to arrive to empirical judgments. To this, they might say that some of our reactions can be reasoned. There are some preferences that may be deemed irrational, and this is studied in theories of preference.
That is all for this summary of some of the most important views on morality. What do you think? Which of these views on morality makes the most sense to you?
These are questions that have been debated for centuries, and they are still relevant today. So, of course, it is possible that none of those views is the right one. Perhaps the answer lies on a hybrid theory or somewhere else completely. The important thing is to keep asking these questions and reflecting on what we believe, because how we understand morality shapes how we live and how we treat others.
If you found the video interesting, please remember to like, share and subscribe to support the channel. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Until next time!